I've been I've been working in the U.S. for most of my life to try to bring together the wisdom of the ancient contemplative traditions like the Buddhist meditation tradition with modern health science, medicine, psychology, business, and education. So the Institute, Nalanda Institute, is really developed as a nonprofit in the U.S. to help bring these treasures of the ancient tradition that Diego and I have both spent much of our lives studying into dialogue with Western sciences, psychology, and other professional disciplines as a way to help bring this powerful wisdom and methods into our everyday lives and to help us transform as people and transform the way we live. So I certainly want to hear from Diego, but I also want to maybe start our brief time together with a little grounding practice just to give us all a chance to settle our minds so that we can listen more deeply and share more deeply. Diego, should I start that practice now, or would you like to?
Please. No, go ahead, and then we can start getting into our brainy stuff.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So I'm going to use a Tibetan bell, which I love, and I hope the sound is just right. It's very hard to get these things across on Zoom. Okay, so for those of you who are not used to meditating online, or maybe not used to meditating at all, we begin just by trying to gather our attention into our bodies in the present moment. Maybe begin by just focusing on your body and your posture and noticing if you're seated comfortably, if you can feel the cushion or chair supporting you, and to just do whatever you need to do to feel more settled in your seat. And at the same time, remember and be aware of your body as a living, breathing thing, and allow yourself to sort of be aware of how the energy of the breath is uplifting and moving and helps to give our bodies a kind of fluidity, a dynamism, and a dignity, or inspiration. And what I'd like you to do, most people close their eyes at least partially to try to reduce stimulation. So if you're not familiar with the practice of mindfulness, feel free to close your eyes a bit. It's certainly fine to close them entirely, or you can leave them a little open and just loosely focus on the floor or on the, what's in front of you. Most of us tend to try to put our hands somewhere where they won't fidget, such as on our knees or lap. And unless there's a reason why breathing through your nostrils isn't comfortable, then mostly we try to breathe through the nostrils because it slows the breath rhythm, and slowing the breath rhythm slows our whole nervous system, our whole mind and body down. Right, so at this point, let's just try to sit together in this virtual space and just allowing ourselves to take some nice full breaths in and out. Right, maybe start by consciously trying to allow our bodies to take a deep, slow breath, maybe into the belly if that's available to you, if that feels comfortable. And breathing fully out through the mouth. And maybe another one or two of those nice full deep breaths all the way, slowly, gently filling the chest and even pressing into the belly. And then breathing out. And maybe one more. Nice full deep breath in. Feeling the chest expand, the belly fill. And then breathing out. And the next phase of our brief practice may be just allow the breath to cycle naturally at its own pace, in its own way, but try to use the breath to invite your mind, your attention, to come into your body, to come back into connection with your body, and to find maybe that place in your body where you most sense the rhythm of breathing, wherever that might be. It might be in the head, or feel free to, if you're breathing in and you can most easily feel the breath in your chest, or perhaps you feel the movement of the breath in your belly. So wherever it makes the most sense, wherever you most feel your body breathing, let's take that as a centering place, a grounding place to just rest our mind in this moment and try to settle and reconnect with the simple rhythms of your life, the simple rhythm of the breath. As you notice your body, your breath filling, uplifting your chest, and then emptying out, just try to let more and more of your awareness, a little bit at a time, come into contact with the breath and come to rest where you really sense the breath, deeply connecting with your body in this moment. You may need to let go of the distractions of whatever happened in your day thus far, whatever is in the past, whatever you're looking forward to in the future. Really try to give yourself permission in this moment to just really notice, to be curious and sense what it's like to be sitting calmly and bringing awareness to your breathing body. And try not to be concerned if your mind gets distracted. It's quite natural, or if your mind gets a little sleepy and foggy. But allow yourself to notice if you're drifting away from the breath or your body, either into distraction or into sleepiness, and just gently invite the mind to return, to let go of the distraction or resist the sleepiness, and return awareness to the simple felt sense of breathing in this moment. Okay, and as we get a little more grounded and centered in this moment, perhaps you might notice something about how you're feeling, something that's on your mind, as you maybe open your awareness at your heart, if there's maybe some sense of what brought you to this gathering, what curiosity, what intention, what concern. Are there things that you're hoping to find some help with? Is there an interest in going deeper with practice, or trying to explore a more contemplative and present form of life, and just honor that whatever is arising for you right now as we sit together. And again, maybe set an intention to make the most of this time to get what you need and see where your interests can take you. Okay, so just coming back to the simple physicality of your breath in your body, maybe the physical sense of sitting in a chair, on a cushion, maybe feeling that contact on your seat, on your back, and maybe being aware of your body in the room as sort of maybe the air in the room or the feeling of your clothing on your skin. And at your own pace, as I ring the bell, feel free to open your eyes again, and let's explore together what this journey of contemplative psychotherapy might hold for you. Okay. So thank you all. And I wonder, Diego, if you'd like to maybe tell us a little about yourself and about this this partnership. I mean, I think we're all really excited to be working together to bring this sort of new science and new practices that have really been showing traction in terms of improving mental, physical well-being and helping us all get to the next level in terms of our capacity to care for ourselves and the world.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first and foremost, hello to everybody. I know a few of the people are present, and I welcome everybody else who I don't know yet. And some of you know me in that sense that I have always been keenly interested in the understanding of what is actually a healthy mind. And in order to understand the healthy mind, I thought in the West over 40 years ago that the best place to start studying that is psychopharmaca, because we are really working with substances that have an effect on the mind. And so these so-called, among them, mind-altering substances, I thought that they might give me an understanding of what is the mind. But even after 5 years studying deeply these mind-altering substances and the chemistry and all of that, there was no talk, not even once, about what is the mind. And so I left quite frustrated the academia at that time, and was keenly interested in, okay, how can I help people who have problems with their minds, particularly addicts? So some of you might remember the Needle Park in Zurich at the Blattspitz. So my pharmacy was just on the Langstrasse, and I was really in the middle of this whole issue of really having minds that are not very healthy. And it really struck me that we don't, at that time, we didn't have an iota idea about what is actually a healthy mind and how to cultivate it. We were very good at analyzing and identifying all these dysfunctionalities, like the disease manuals. And so I then decided to explore a little bit further. And I came into contact with Buddhism at that time, already during my studies. And it became really clear to me that the Buddhist methodology is very systematic and extremely scientific in its approach to what is the mind and how can we cultivate these positive qualities. And of course, we also were analyzing in the context of the practice, or then in the studies, somewhat the dysfunctional minds, but it wasn't at the forefront. It was really what is the actual experience, as opposed to just looking at from outside what is happening in a person and its behaviors. And so that really piqued my interest. And so I then learned Tibetan. I spent 2 years in Nepal and then 11 years in Dharamsala. I studied at the Buddhist dialectic school. And it is there that during my stay in India, there were these fascinating gatherings that His Holiness the Dalai Lama was inviting scientists to discuss topics like sleeping, dreaming, and dying. What do Western scientists say about that? And what do Buddhists say about that? And so I became a translator, both bridge building, and my classmates at that time, they were, of course, very much interested in what has Western psychology, Western science to say about all these things. And so in the background, and then also in the forefront of the Mind and Life conferences, I was very much involved to the point that I became, like Begonia was saying, I became the chief operating officer of the Mind and Life Institute. And then when I decided to come back to the West, because I thought, like Joe was saying, there's so much richness and so much wealth in that tradition, but it needs to be made accessible for Western minds. And I remember very clearly when the Dalai Lama, His Holiness, during one of the conferences in 2000, he said, well, this is all interesting what we're doing here, these discussions, but what can we do for society? And then he put a challenge out there to those scientists present, among them Richie Davidson, Dan Goleman was present, and of course also Paul Ekman. Can you, with your methods, prove that what we think is beneficial to really be of beneficial? And if it is beneficial, then it should be made available for everybody. However, if it's not beneficial, then we Buddhists have to change. And I thought this was just brilliant because it really put the whole epistemological exploration at the forefront. And if we decide and identify that something is wrong, well, then it's wrong. We need to change it. And so this is the basis that actually unleashed this whole research. And because I was one of those people present and the guinea pigs where they were looking for, I also became a guinea pig in the research agenda. And maybe some of you have seen this image here. That's in one of the labs where we were really looking at what is different in brains that have been trained over extended period of time. And I just want to say that I am not one of those big guys. I just have done several 10,000 hours, but really you can tell the difference for somebody that has done 40,000, 50,000 hours. And we should also understand that 10,000 hours is quite a lot of time. 10,000 hours is basically, if you do it 1 hour a day, it's 30 years. Or, of course, if you do it 10 hours a day, that's 3 years. So that's kind of like the benchmark that we're talking about at the time of exploration. But what was really interesting to me was also the dialogue that started emerging. It wasn't just proving that meditation is good, but really bringing these methodologies to interact with each other. And so this is what I've been doing basically all my life. But here I found in the Mind and Life context, I found a really good vessel. But I started discovering more and more in my time, my active time with Mind and Life. I'm still involved, but it really dawned on me that it's not only enough to have the wisdom or the knowledge, but what do we do about it? Like His Holiness was saying, how can we make it accessible and available? And so when Begonia approached me, and I was already aware of what Joe Loizzo was doing with the Nalanda Institute, of really bringing psychotherapy together with the contemplative practices, I thought, this is great. I'm really happy to support in any possible way that this endeavor, these explorations can really forward this understanding. And I can really see in the work that I'm doing now, particularly in the translation of these practices, how much really the understanding of the contemplative practice, as well as neuroscience and clinical science and coaching, this is something I'm doing quite intensively, can really benefit both individuals, but also teams, communities, and of course also in the context of work and business. And so that's a short introduction why I am involved and what I'm bringing to the table. And so thank you, Joe, for inviting me to be part of this. So
Yeah,
please.
wonderful, and thank you for sharing your very rich relationship to this endeavor, and everything you bring. And I'll just say a little bit more about how I got to this unusual form of work that I'm doing. And actually, it starts really in Switzerland, where I saw my dad finishing medical school, and he eventually came to the States, became a psychiatrist. So I joke that as a psychiatrist, I have an inherited condition. But one of the things I noticed over the course of his practice, he had a psychotherapy practice in the home, is that he did slowly become more stressed out. And then carrying the burden of caring for others, he was very effective and loved by his clients, but I really think he wasn't so able to carry the burden. On the other hand, my mother, who actually came from Italy, was a teacher, and unlike my dad, who was fascinated by science, stayed very interested in her spiritual practice. And my mom, this was my double-blind experiment in my home. My dad got more and more burnt out doing this very important work, helping others. And my mom kind of got calmer and happier and more present over the years. And I thought, there must be something to that contemplative or spiritual journey that is missing in modern scientific or clinical world. So as I went to college, in my first religion class, I was interested in the psychology of religion, bringing a copy of Jung with me to college, right? I met Robert Thurman, who was my first Western teacher, and that was actually his first year teaching. Way back in the 70s, it was quite a while ago. And really found that Buddhism, just as Diego was saying, Buddhism has this very unique bridge between the spiritual world, the contemplative practice, and the scientific mindset, and the curiosity and openness and empirical mind. Of course, as Diego also pointed out, there's a fundamental difference, because the empirical mind in the Buddhist tradition is experiential. It's about our, n equals 1 or n equals 2. It's about our inside out experience of life, and is the way we're thinking, the practices we're engaging in, are they helping us live better with ourselves and others? Are they helping us live better in our human skin? And that's a very different kind of science than we think of as science in the West. However, it's very, very resonant with psychotherapy, right? Because this is what we're doing in psychotherapy. We're exploring the lived experience of another and bringing the world of science and neuroscience and sometimes maybe pharmacology, but also addiction work and all kinds of approaches to help a person understand themselves better and live better. So there's a deep resonance or synergy, in my view, in the methodology between the Buddhist approach to helping, healing, even just learning, and the world of psychotherapy. So when I went to get my training, at Harvard and elsewhere, I always continued to study alongside my official training, my medical training, studied the Dharma, and that brought me to India. It brought me to present at a number of the Mind Life conferences. Diego, we probably were in the same room at the same time often. And of course, when I started out, and probably when you started out, Diego, there was not very much awareness that this was not a very, in fact, I had to kind of keep it secret from my colleagues, because they might think, oh, what's he up to?
Career suicide.
Exactly. So this was what was really inspiring to me, is that when I came back to New York in the 90s to study again with Bob Thurman and do Buddhist studies, because finally I wanted to really learn how to translate and so on, and continue my studies of the Dharma. The culture had changed, and there was huge curiosity, and there was this John Kabat-Zinn. I mean, I worked at Herb Benson's lab for a while and visited John Kabat-Zinn when he was developing MBSR. But this was now becoming mainstream, and there was a revolutionary awareness that these worlds were coming together. And so in a way, what I had hoped for and dreamed for as a kid was really coming to pass. And that's the basis on which I started Nalanda Institute, because I felt that, while institutions like Mind Life and a lot of the sort of research institutions like Richie's lab and so on, were cranking out a lot of powerful findings that show the efficacy, not just the efficacy of meditation in changing the brain, the efficacy of meditative practices in promoting healing. We had psychotherapy, mindfulness-based therapies and compassion-based therapies developing that were proving effective. But what wasn't happening was a way for people to really learn in depth, right? So like exactly as Diego's saying, like, what's next? So now we know there's really something here. There's something that we really might benefit from, and we might be able to bring to our lives, our families, our clients, the world at large. But how do we get the deeper training? Because we're living in a culture where we've cut the roots of our spiritual contemplative traditions, right? How do we learn how to have a real foundation in not just the theory and the science, but the practice and the ethics and the way to really live this different way of being, so that we can become laboratories and discover how to refine the medicine that we can maybe share with others. And that's really why I founded Nalanda Institute, was really to provide a training, a context for long-term training for people that were seriously interested in going beyond the kind of popularized forms of mindfulness, or even the very critical scientific curiosity about how it works and so on. So that's basically my story and what I'm doing here. And I thought we would maybe pivot and talk a little bit about the program itself and just how do we do that? Because we've been running this program in New York and actually around the world for 10 years now. We've had thousands of folks graduating. New York has been our oldest and our most continuous program, but we've had a program in Toronto, which is still a partner now. We have a program in San Francisco. We have a program in the Spanish world, which is how we met, because one of our partners, Javier Garcia Campayo in Zaragoza, introduced us to Begonia, Landguet Ried, and Diego, and so we're very grateful. But we really want to make this kind of training available to the largest audience we can. So that's the motive that we're involved in. So maybe we should just talk a little bit. I don't know. We really want to leave plenty of time for you to ask questions, share your own experiences or your own journey a little bit. But we thought we'd spend a few minutes just sort of looking at the logic of the program, and just some of the basic structure for you all to just have that as a common database. Does that make sense, Diego?
Absolutely, yeah. I think we should show just a little bit of the content. Yeah. What's going to happen during that, and just a few pointers. And I know that Joe has prepared wonderful presentations, so I'm going to phase out, and then then we will shift into questions and answers, if that is okay. And maybe also afterwards would be nice to for the people to see quickly Roshana, who is part of our team.
Absolutely. So Begonia, do you think you could share those slides? Okay.
That's slide number 2.
Yeah, you may, there we go. Okay, well, so there's the, now you see the title page. So where do we begin? If you want to switch to the next slide, Begonia. So we really begin with the discovery of neuroplasticity, which, for which one of my colleagues at Columbia, Eric Kandel, got the Nobel Prize in 2000. So this is relatively new news. I know that most of you have probably heard about neuroplasticity and the understanding that our brains are like our muscles in the sense that they're constantly being sculpted or formed by how we use them. And of course, how we're using them depends on our attention and where we put our mind. And this is where the, Diego's observation that there's no room for mind in the modern sciences really becomes very, very critical, because we really understand that actually the mind has a very powerful impact. It's not just along for the ride. And researchers like Dan Siegel, who's on our faculty, Richie, who's on our faculty, really started to talk about neuroplasticity as the basis for not just stress reduction, but really to transform the whole brain and our whole embodied way of life to promote optimal health and well-being, right? This positive health that Diego's talking about. And of course, what we discovered is that there are structures in the brain that, when we practice things like meditation, help promote our well-being and help increase the integration and connectivity of our brain and our integration and connectivity with others, our social emotional ability to connect and to be resilient and to be truly creative and compassionate with others. So essentially, and we'll briefly just talk here a little bit about how the research on mindfulness, which initially, meditation research, as you can imagine, initially began as a very obscure and marginal discipline. But something happened around the 2000s that actually changed that and led to what we call the mindfulness revolution, to the point where now mindfulness and other kinds of meditative practices are really seen as the best practices to promote a neuroplasticity and well-being. So can we go to the next slide, Begonia? Okay, so there's Dan, and he's talking about, I don't know if you've ever seen Dan Siegel. He's a psychiatrist from UCLA who's on our faculty and who's very interested in the neuroscience of attachment and the importance of mind. Like he and I have had many conversations about bemoaning the fact that we spent all of our time in medical school and in psychiatric training without anybody mentioning the mind. And we've been both trying to change that. And of course, Bob Thurman is there, as I mentioned, one of the world's leading Buddhist scholars, translators, a lifelong friend of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Maybe we could go to the next slide there. And of course, you recognize perhaps Richie Davidson and another of Diego's friends, Mathieu Ricard, in the lab for a very important study. And I think, Diego, you were a member of that team getting put through the MRI and the EEG for the Lutz study that came out in 2004. Is that right?
Right. One of the guinea pigs.
Just amazing. So maybe I'll just share a little bit about the findings, and then Diego, maybe you can help just give everybody a flavor for what it was like to be an intimate part of that research.
Right, go ahead.
So what the study found was that there's a brainwave that's very unusual to find in most EEGs, the high frequency gamma wave, which is unusual because it's thought to be a kind of very highly excited or active mode of the brain, and it's thought to be kind of an indicator or marker of learning. That is like the eureka moment when we just discover something and our brain and our mind are very excited and very active. And of course, that brainwave since we're not very often in that eureka state, you don't see it very often on an EEG. But one of the things that was found in this study was that these meditators, these expert meditators, were able to generate long trains of gamma waves, longer than anything that have ever been recorded or seen. They were able to generate them across the whole neocortex, the whole primate, the new part of the brain. And they were able to do so at will, to turn them on and off. So if you switch to the next slide, this is, no, I'm sorry, let's go back to that. And I'm sorry, thank you. So this was actually the first study published on meditation in the very prestigious proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in the USA. And what it really marks, and this was published in 2004 by Antoine Lutz and Richie Davidson and others, what it really shows is the convergence between the science of meditation research and the science of neuroplasticity, which had been the main revolution in neuroscience over the last 50 years. So what happened was the discipline of meditation research went from being a very marginal discipline to being right smack in the middle of what the cutting edge of neuroscience, because it seemed that maybe meditation was a practical paradigm for how to cultivate and control neuroplasticity, and hence maybe influence the way our brains are shaped. Diego, do you want to share what it was like to be part of that?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. The big challenge was that up to then, it was considered to be impossible to report personal experience from external observation. There was always sort of the bias that, yes, all psychological and first-person reporting is not accurate. And in this research, we were actually asked to do a meditation and then gauge the depth of our meditation. And so we were actually reporting, and you don't have a picture, but I would have a picture where we were sitting in front of a computer and we're basically telling how deep we are actually in the state of meditation. And it's like putting pressure on a pedal. When you're driving the car, you know exactly, you're not just going to go jam and step on the brake, unless you really want to make a full stop, but you can actually gauge, like a pedal, the depth of the braking or the strength of the braking. And in the same way, we were asked to basically report on the depth of our practice. And to the surprise of the researchers, we were actually very accurate at reporting our depth of meditation with the emergence of that gamma wave activity. And so there was a correlation of us reporting the depth of the practice and getting a bit lower. As you know, practice is not continuous, but you can actually tell, oh, now I'm a little bit deeper, or I'm really focused, I'm really clear in my state, and I'm stable, and now I'm moving out again. And so this is actually what, for me personally, as a practitioner, has been extremely helpful, which is the precision of my own practice. I needed to develop that precision of my own practice in order to be able to converse with science. And yes, at the beginning, it was not so clear what we were supposed to be doing, but in the exchange, we were just going first through different types of practices, but then gradually we started developing, okay, these are topics that we could really tease out as one aspect of observation, and that was one of them. And that's when actually these gamma wave activity was really observed in correlation with our own internal observation.
Wonderful.
And you can see the lower graph. Yes, we were all about 15,000 hours, but one person, and really with more hours of practice, the correlation of the intensity of the signal was quite clear.
And so Diego's was one of the brain. If you look at the slide here, you'll see on the right-hand side, the brain that's all reddish is the one with a lot of gamma wave, high frequency gamma activity, whereas the ones on the left are the non-meditators who were controls. And so Diego's one of the brains that fed into that cumulative picture there showing how much more activity in the gamma wave spectrum, these expert meditators had. Thanks so much. Maybe we can move on to the next slide. And just so what is meditation? This is one of the things, of course we talk about science in the Contemplative Psychotherapy Program, but we're also really trying to introduce you to the science of the mind that developed as part of the meditation tradition. It's a very precise way of understanding how mind works. It's the kind of thing that trains a person to be able to do what Diego was doing, to be able to monitor his own mind and brain from the inside out and really steer and not only know where it is, but to move it in the direction that we want to. So how does that happen? Well, there's a range of different skills. It's not just mindfulness, but compassion is extremely important. In emotional intelligence, imagery is used, posture is used, breath work, all of these techniques are used. There's an attempt to train attention to be able to focus the mind at will, which for those of us that have done meditation practice know that that's easier said than done. But we do allow ourselves to even very modest amounts of practice. I mean, Diego's talking about hundreds, thousands of hours, but the good news is that even very modest amounts of practice increase our ability to control our attention and increase our ability to direct and observe and direct what's happening in our minds and brains. And that's why this practice isn't just good for experts, but it's good for all of us. It's something everyone should be trained in, all of our families, our clients. And it allows us not just to watch what our thoughts are doing and to monitor our own thoughts, but also to monitor our emotions, to regulate them better, to be able to bounce back from stress, and to learn at this very deep level where it's not just that where our brains are learning through being resculpted, and even our brains are being rewired as healthier brains, as more integrated, more interconnected brains, less affected by stress, and which tends to compartmentalize our nervous system and our minds. So maybe we can go to the next slide.
And Joe, just as an add-on, I think it's also important to understand that these are not just monks that were in the lab. There's a misnomer here that is always said, yeah, the monks in the lab. I know many monks that don't know how to meditate to begin with, but this is the thing here that is very close to my heart. We were actually quite a lot of also long-term practitioners that were not ordained. So it's accessible to everybody, not just because you have some vows that you can then do it, and because you don't have those vows, you cannot. So it's important, as Joe was saying, even small amounts have already an impact. And it's not only reserved for ordained people.
Exactly. In fact, I would say maybe that's the whole thrust of the Nalanda tradition. We'll talk about Nalanda University, and Nalanda Institute is really based on what is the world's first university, and the focus of that tradition, which the Dalai Lama now uses to really describe all of Tibetan Buddhism, right? Because all the schools of Tibetan Buddhism originated from Nalanda faculty or abbots who came to Tibet. But the focus is on teaching the scientific version of the teaching, and on teaching not just to the monastic world, but to the world at large, all the lay community, healers, leaders, and so on and so forth. And another important thing for us to understand is that, just as the brain has many levels and stress operates at many levels of the brain, meditation has many different aspects, or there are many different tools. And you can think of those different tools as really specifically addressing or targeting different elements of the stress response and different elements of the well-being or thriving system. And so here I'm just aligning, that mindfulness training has been shown to be very impactful on how the neocortex, the new part of the brain, the primate brain processes, the thinking and imagining brain. The compassion training works very powerfully at shifting the way our emotional brain operates from fear and reactivity to social engagement and positivity. And then the deeper practices, such as imagery, breathing, posture, really reached all the way deep into the brainstem, the oldest part of the brain, and help regulate our autonomic nervous system, which is so key in terms of our general level of well-being as opposed to stress. So Begonia, do you want to maybe move us on here? I'm not sure, Begonia, if you heard, would you mind switching to the next slide? Uh-oh. Okay, all right. So, yeah, so this, this really just shows that, through the practice, we take the basis of our nervous system. Of course, it's not just brain, it's also consciousness, right? So brain is just what we talk about in Western science, but in the Buddhist science, we talk about the different levels of consciousness: waking consciousness, dreaming consciousness, sleeping consciousness, and so on. But these practices help to build these better outcomes: presence, being really able to be whole and at ease in the moment, resonance, being able to connect deeply with others through empathy and communication, and resilience, really being very able to not react to the challenges of life with stressors, with stress reactions like fight or flight, faint or freeze. So maybe we can move to the next. So this is just some of the basic, right? So I just want to give you a brief, like a historical overview, and I'm not sure how we're doing for time. I'll try to move a little more quickly through this historical overview so we have plenty of time for questions. So I just want to start by saying, as I mentioned in the beginning, that the Buddhist science and psychotherapy share a lot of similarities. And these have been emphasized. They have a similar view of the mind as a powerful, effective, causally effective thing. They share a kind of perspective, an evolutionary perspective, a multi-life perspective. And they also share this understanding that impacting the mind is done best through a relationship that's a caring, loving, kind of a reparenting relationship. So they share that, of course, there's differences as well. Obviously, modern science and psychotherapy grew out of the materialist, medical model and had a different view of evolution and different interventions. But nonetheless, despite the differences, there's a huge area of overlap. And if we respect the differences, we really can have a very vibrant and interesting dialogue. So shall we move on to the next there? Great. So basically, the way we teach in the Contemplative Psychotherapy Program mirrors the way that in the Nalanda tradition and the Buddhist tradition, healing and training the mind is taught. As Westerners, we like the gimmicks, so we want to focus on meditation, which seems like the tool that can help us change things. But the reality is, from the Buddhist point of view, meditation alone, without wisdom and ethics, is like a bird without wings. We don't know what to do with it, what direction to go in, and it won't necessarily promote a whole lot of well-being. Of course, it's not a bad thing to do, just meditating. It's good to take a vacation. It's good to take a sauna. But if we really want to be a healthier, happier human, we need to really learn to think differently and feel and act differently. And so we focus on these three disciplines together. And if you want to switch to the next slide, the framework, the DNA of the program is to put these three disciplines in dialogue with different Western scientific or practical disciplines, right? So we put meditation in dialogue with neuropsychology to help us understand kind of, neuroscience from the inside out is meditative science. But we also want to understand, how does that dialogue with brain science? We want to look at the wisdom of the contemplative traditions. How do we live a happier life in dialogue with psychotherapy, which has a similar pursuit? And we look at the contemplative ethics, the spirit, motivation, and skill with which we engage in whatever we're doing for ourselves and others. in dialogue with modern social psychology, social work, social justice, and so on. So this is how the program dialogues or integrates East and West. Maybe we can go to the next. Look like we've had a, yeah. Begonia, do you want to represent? There we go. Okay. And maybe the next slide. Thank you so much. So I mentioned Nalanda, which actually is the world's first university. It started really to become highly developed as early as the 250, which was probably a millennium or so before the University of Bologna and Paris and Oxford. It really took the early Buddhist and yogic traditions in India, what we call Indic contemplative science, and made them available to everybody in the society as a kind of common knowledge or common science and practice that was integrated into statecraft, integrated into economics, integrated into healthcare, integrating into engineering and architecture. So the university was a contemplative university, but it was very engaged with the world. And as I mentioned, it's the source of all the schools of Tibetan Buddhism. So we go to the next, and you'll see the first Buddhist Nalanda, the first Tibetan Nalanda. The Tibetans built a kind of replica of Nalanda in a place called Samye as early as 850. So from that time on, all of the cultures of Asia were busy importing and studying at Nalanda and bringing back science and art and wisdom and practice to all the various parts of Asia. And maybe we'll look now briefly and see how that happened, right? So this is how Buddhism spread throughout Asia, right? And the different colors you'll see represent different historical eras of spread. So let's look at the next slide. The first spread is the one to South Asia and Southeast Asia, which is the one we know through the mindfulness tradition, the Theravada or forest tradition. In the next slide shows the spread across the Silk routes to East Asia that we know through Zen and Pure Land Buddhism and so on. And then finally, historically, the last, which happened more starting in the 5th century of the Common Era up until the 12th century, the spread was into Central Asia, that is Nepal, Ladakh, Tibet, Mongolia, which preserved as a result of that, because all of these were really coming from the same cultural seed. What happened is that the tradition that got preserved in Tibet was the most comprehensive, and it included the sum. If you want to move to the next slide, Begonia, it included the sum of all of these different traditions, right? What we call the individual practice of mindfulness, the universal practice of compassion, and the process practice of embodied practice, learning how to transform the nervous system very directly. And of course, there's the medicine Buddha, who's thought of as the Buddha manifesting as a healer, and particularly as the teacher of healers, right? The Vaishajya Guru means the teacher of healers, or the mentor of healers. So the individual vehicle, these are the things that we'll explore in the Contemplative Psychotherapy Program. We look at, the first year we focus very much on mindfulness, the science of self-analysis, and dispassion or loving kindness as an ethics, right? And then if we go to the next slide, we'll see what happens in the second year, where we look at the science of interdependence, of social interconnectedness, and social emotional interconnectedness. We'll look at the art of emotional intelligence or compassion training, and the ethos of universal compassion. And then finally, we touch on the third program in the second year, right? That is, we touch on embodied practice, which is about integrating the nervous system through the deepest level of working with breath, body, and image, and teaching the science of regulation through using role modeling imagery and what we call the ethos of pure passion or inspiration. But we're also developing a third year. So traditionally we've touched on this in the second year, but we're also going to expand on that because of the increased interest in embodied practices, given the science of trauma and the understanding of how important it is to work directly with the body. We're planning on developing a third year of the program as well. So maybe we can go on very specifically and just touch on how the unique thing about the Tibetan tradition is that it integrates all three of these into one path of healing and learning. And that's the spirit of our contemplative psychotherapy program, is that it isn't just based on mindfulness. It's not just based on compassion. It's not just based on embodied practices. It integrates all of those practices into a cohesive approach to healing and well-being. And yeah, well, this is probably goes into too much detail for us right now, but basically this just maps how we cover all of how we connect the different forms of practice with different forms of psychology, with the brain and so on. But again, yeah, Begonia, you were right to just skip that slide. And so in the year one, as I said, of the journey, we focus on mindfulness and self-compassion and loving kindness. Year two, we focus on compassion and some embodiment practices like imagery and breath work. And then year three, we'll be focusing on much more deeply imagery, breath work, posture, and so on. And if you want to go to the next slide, I think gives you a sense of what the year is like. There's an opening and an intercession retreat on a weekend usually. There's 30 lectures that are recorded over the course of the year, and readings that go along with those lectures. And these are experts like Richie Davidson and Dan Siegel, as well as our own core faculty. We have 15 live interactive discussion Zooms. So those would be hour-and-a-half Zoom classes with Diego, myself, Roshana. I hope Begonia will join us, just to help everyone meditate, process, maybe do some supervision and case presentation. And then, of course, another key factor here is the rigorous home practice. We're really trying to encourage people do their own inner laboratory, work with the practices, and gain momentum and strength. And I guess just we have one more slide basically before we're out of this, and that is just to help you understand some of the other supports that are available in the program. There's office hours with our program co-directors. There's peer-to-peer practice, leading meditations. So one of the things we do when we gather in those every other week is you would be leading meditations with your peers to get used to leading them, so that when you teach your family, friends, clients, or whatever, you'll be confident. There's also a year-end capstone project, which kind of helps you formulate how you want to apply what you're learning in your life. It can be very informal or very formal, depending on how you like that. And also there's a weekly peer-led practice group for those who just want more time to practice together. So I think that's basically it. Yeah, there we go. So we can stop sharing that and we have some time to connect and discuss. So please do bring yourselves into the dialogue. You need to raise your hand.
Yeah, I would say I hope you are familiar with how to go about raising your hand. Otherwise, it's in the participants. Where is it now? Oh, sorry, in the reactions. Reactions button, which is towards the right-hand side of the bottom of the screen, and just raise hand. And then as people are raising hands, I will unmute them, and then you will have the floor to ask your question.
And while people are raising their hands, since I will need to drop off momentarily, I just wanted to briefly introduce myself.
Yeah, please.
No worries. Roshana Green, Director of Equity and Strategic Partnerships at Nalanda Institute. I co-direct the New York version of this program and will be co-directing here. And background is in science, spent 15 plus years working in science industry, medical device companies, business development, marketing, as well as teaching yoga and meditation. So I will be joining you in some of those process times to help in meditation and also with processing of material. So
Thank you so much, Roshana. Thanks for introducing yourself. I appreciate it.
Thank
thank you all.
And thank you for joining us.
We're watching with you.
Same, Diego.
Yeah. So floor is open. Anybody wanting to ask any questions, you're very welcome. Don't be shy. It's a great moment to ask your questions.
If you are feeling shy, you can also put them in the chat, which.
Yeah. I see there is one. So there is Matthias.
Yeah, hello to everyone. Yeah, my first question would be, how much time do you think this will take to be part of the program? Because I have a full-time job, I'm a teacher. So what do you think it would take?
Well, there'll be at least an hour and a half looking at the recording, right? The recorded lecture, maybe another 45 minutes or so reading. So let's just say 2.5 hours. And then every other week there's an hour and a half meeting. So somewhere between 4 and you could probably do it in 4 hours a week.
Okay.
But of course, then there's your practice. If you already have a practice, then you don't have to add that. But if you didn't, you'd want to add at least 15 or 20 minutes, hopefully half an hour, but whatever you can. So you can sort of scale it to your lifestyle. It's not overly demanding, but it can be very enriching if you want to invest more time and energy.
Okay, so it will be around 4 hours, you say. And yeah, okay. And the other question I have, I am meditating already, like an hour a day mostly. But I think I would need more support. Would I get personal more support? Because I'm really not really know where I'm going.
Yes, because again, a key part of you both get group support and individual support. So the group support is one of the things we do over the course of the year is we lead meditations, we talk about how meditations work, we get feedback from folks about their practice, questions about how I could make my practice go deeper. So we're really kind of systematically spending about a month on each of in this mindfulness year, we touch on 6 or more different kinds of basic practice, mindfulness and loving kindness practice. In the compassion year, we also have 6 different practices we touch on. So we spend time seriously talking about what is this practice? How does it work? How does it work for me? And then of course you could always bring it to a personal meeting with one of the co-directors to discuss any personal issues you have about obstacles or questions. And then there's also a practice field that you could join, which is a peer-led group to get other peers' feedback. So there's many different ways where you could get guidance and feedback about your practice hopefully that you can deepen it and just understand it better. There's another key benefit of this kind of learning is that as you can see from the presentation, in the tradition, meditation is not really understood as standing alone, and that a big part of what meditation is learning why we do it, how to use it, and with what mindset, with what sort of understanding and what sort of motivation. So those are all aspects that might enrich your practice as well.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
And one of the key items of every practice is really to not only understand the theory, the Tawa, but also the application. And often you kind of start applying it and you realize, oh, my theory might be a little bit wrong, or the practice needs some adjustment, or the insights that you gain from the application feed back into your practice. So it's actually very dynamic meditation, and this is often what is misunderstood, and I'm really glad that Joe is pointing that out. It's not something a standalone. It's really embedded in a larger context. Of course, ethics is one, that's more on the activity, but also the theory, the framing, the contextualization. So that we certainly will be addressing repeatedly throughout the program.
Yeah, okay, this would be really nice because I'm by myself all the time, no feedback. I don't know where I'm going, nobody else talking about this thing. So it's lonely business, and I think I'm missing things.
Yeah, community is, I think community is a very basic part of the learning model in the Buddhist tradition. And we've found that one of the things that these programs provide is a sense of a deep community with like-minded people who want to live differently, who want to have a contemplative life. And that's in a way maybe more important than anything else, is just to know you're not alone and to share with others a journey of exploration and change.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
There's some great questions in the chat, which I will address.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind? I'll just read.
Go ahead.
Tahira asks, will there be a final written paper or exam? Is there a certificate? So there is a capstone project, and the capstone, it's not an exam. This is really contemplative learning. So we're not so focused on the details of the knowledge or skill as we are on your experience. The capstone can be any project that you feel helps you grow and in your understanding or your application of what we're learning. So for example, if you're a therapist, you could try to teach some of your clients meditation, or if you're a parent, you could try to teach your kids to meditate, or some people have done art as their final project. Some people have built a website. Some people have done scientific research. So it can be anything whatsoever that reflects your interest and your journey. There is a certificate, so that if you meet the needs of the certificate, you would get from the Institute and Landguet Ried a certificate of completion, just showing that you've done the whole program, and hopefully, that can help perhaps can help build your confidence, but also maybe open doors in some way. There's Corinna has also asked, Tonglen and Maitri or metta practice is very much a part of the first year, right? Self-compassion and loving kindness are integral to mindfulness. So we talk about them. In the second year is when we do the lojong, that is mind training or compassion training in the Tibetan way, which includes Tonglen, giving and taking practice, and other practices, including mentor imagery and some breath work. So we do, body, speech, and mind supervision. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but in other words, we do try to work with people over time to help them integrate the practice as deeply as possible. So we do supervise both for your own practice, and we also supervise you in applying it in your work with others, if you might be a therapist or a teacher or whatever that might be. Wind training or mind or breath training we do in the latter part of the second year. We often have Tibetan teachers like Dr. Nita Chanaksang, for example, and we have some of our faculty, including Roshana, who are expert in pranayama and breath control. So we cover some of the breathing practices that are core to influencing your nervous system. And I think there's one last question by Bess. Is the program recognized by the Swiss Association of Psychologists? Not yet. So this would be like more in the form of continuing education for you, and hopefully we can get it approved as a training.
Yeah, we will certainly, we will be able, of course, to provide like the certification for and the number of hours that will count as continued education, that's for sure.
Edith
Yeah. So I'm a German-speaking person, but since I got in touch with MBSR and made my certificate even, I got very much interested. How does all these things work in my body? I'm not a doctor. I was just speaking literature and things like that. But I spent nights over nights and years in America with Stephen Porges and with Seagulls and Sharon Salzberg, Neff, German, all this. And I like reading because Buddhist texts are so beautiful to get reading. So my question, most recently I got in touch with Chap Chen by Julie Henderson. I was taught that by a German leader of her own institute, Mrs. Hammer. And so this goes into embodiment.
Yes.
And that maybe what, yeah, and the Buddhist part, of course, the last one in your time scale. And so, that would be your teaching in the third year about? Is
We
that
would,
correct? Because I am so eager to get
yeah.
much more of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we start to teach the mind, sort of deep awareness practices, we call it, or Dzogchen, Rigpo, these kinds of things, Mahamudra. We start to teach them in the second year. So in the second half of the second year, we usually have Dr. Nita come and teach about Hatha Yoga, Dzogchen, and so on. But we would go even more deeply into it in the third year. So, and we really believe, I mean, it's great. Like a lot of the people you mentioned are on our faculty, Stephen Porges and Chris Germer is an old friend, and Dan Siegel, obviously. But we really believe we really believe that it's important for people to also get the foundation. And the way we present the foundation is unique because it's not just from the standpoint of the Buddhist tradition, but we're integrating Western neuroscience, Western psychology, we're integrating ethics and the importance of social engagement. And so it's really, a lot of people who already have done a lot of studying still find the program very edifying or satisfying because of how deep we go and because it's an ongoing journey with other people. So,
and one of the key items I think of this whole program is, and it's an advantage, it might be a little bit scary, but it's a long period. You really get to practice. It's not about just filling the brain with more information, because we do have enough information. And as Matthias was saying, it is really important, how do you integrate it full bodily, not just through the brain or the sitting. And that's why I think it's such a unique format. And this is also what we have shown with the resource project at the Max Planck Institute. It's the practice that makes the difference.
Over time. Yeah, and I would also add to that, because you mentioned you're not a therapist, that we have an interdisciplinary approach to learning. And so some of our, usually often half or a little bit more of our students are therapists or in the health field, but we have a lot of people who are teachers, who are coaches, and we've had ministers, we've had firemen, and we really believe that this is not about one particular knowledge, one particular discipline or field in professions. It's really a human journey, and so you all are welcome. I guess we have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Edith. So we have Martina. We have Martina.
Hi, thank you. Well, I'm just curious. My question is similar to Beth's one, and I have done my training in psychology in Switzerland and then studied at Naropa University, where I did the contemplative psychotherapy training and became a licensed like a counselor. And I'm just curious, like now I'm in Switzerland and I'm not qualified to do the work that I was doing in the US. If by doing this training, I might have, as you said, you're working on getting acknowledged in Switzerland, as this might be a pathway of doing the work I'm already have been doing and wanting to continue to do, and having more possibility in Switzerland.
You know, generally we don't link the program to licensing because we're a small nonprofit and it's a huge undertaking to get, accreditation for a program. Ultimately, we'd love to be able to do that. But at this point, it would really be more for, deepening your sense of community, deepening your skills and awareness and practice. But not necessarily giving you a official seal of approval. So, I feel for you. It's a shame that such an important kind of work is controlled by governments in all kinds of bureaucracy. But unfortunately, that's the world we live in.
Unfortunately, because I think it's a great training, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, not at all. Shrikama.
You're muted still.
Shrikama, do you want to unmute because we can't hear you? You're having trouble unmuting? Maybe, are you on a phone? You can text, perhaps you can text your question, put your question in the chat. Okay, sorry. Meanwhile, while she's doing that, Edith had another, did you have another question?
May I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So once more. Although I'm not a psychologist, but I did a lot of studying, many layers, and I appreciate your PowerPoint feeds very, very, very much. Because by that I got an idea of what the whole thing is, what you're teaching, and all these connections and everything.
Oh,
and so my question, it's not very modest. So by participating in this today's evening, would you share your PowerPoint sheets with us?
Sure. I'd be happy to. If I can do that through Begonia, I'm happy to share a version of them.
Thank you.
Okay. Not at all.
Thank you very much.
I think Shikama has now been able to unmute her, or no, remuted her again. No? Sorry.
Okay.
We go now.
So
I think there were some questions in the...
Yes, what practice is done in the in-person retreat? So in the in-person retreat, usually we cover, again, all three disciplines. So let's say in the mindfulness retreat, that would be the first opening retreat, we would touch on the 4 scopes of mindfulness. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but basically mindfulness, as it's traditionally taught, is taught in 4 different formats of practice. And we would also touch on loving kindness, right? So that all of those would be briefly touched on and explained in the context of the discussion of the 4 Noble Truths, the basic framework of all Buddhist science and healing, as well as the ethics of kindness. So we try to touch on all the different disciplines of contemplative learning in the retreat. In terms of how many people attend the program, it usually ranges. We've had small programs starting with 10 or 12, and we have our longer running programs have as many as 50 students enrolled. So at this point, because we're starting new, I would assume it would be an intimate group. But that's going to depend on how many folks enroll. And, I think it would be relatively small in any case as a starting group. Yes, and someone else, Katarina. So that was, yeah, I want to be sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, so Nadia, yes, you're right. You don't need to be a therapist or psychoanalyst or a teacher. It's open to people who have an interest and who want to have this kind of experience of going deep in their own journey for their own benefit, but also, to impact the way that they live in the world. So, okay. Katerina, you had a question about if you couldn't participate in the retreat. Yeah, no, that's not, at this point, given the Delta variant, the opening retreat is happening online, and very likely, or possibly, the retreat that we've scheduled for, I think it's March, might also be happening online. Even if it's not, it will be recorded, so that anyone who can't make a retreat would be able to watch the recording of the retreat. And so it's not necessary to actually be able to make the retreat, certainly not in person, because it doesn't look like we're going to be having an in-person retreat, at least for the fall. Okay, have I gotten all the questions? Begonia, did I miss anything?
Yeah, I think you have answered all the questions, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I think so. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you all.
Actually, Karma is now online.
Who?
So
Oh,
I
okay.
changed the medium. So my question is, I come from Bhakti Yoga and I did the Ayurveda medicine. So I have the holistic thinking on that way, but I'm not from the psychotherapist side. So I also don't know so many things about it. I'm very, very interested in the Buddhism methods, but not so much in the religion and the philosophy. So I just wanted to know how much this is integrated. Not that I'm a dogmatic people. I'm very open-minded, but I don't want to change my religion. So do you think it comes together? Because I think Buddhism has a lot of very, very nice methods.
Absolutely. So we're an educational nonprofit. We're not religious. We offer the teachings as, science-based, evidence-based, critical, practices that are for all of our well-being. And so it's very resonant with the spirit of, we've had a lot of Ayurvedic teachers, acupuncturists, Tibetan doctors, and a lot of yoga trained people who want to learn more about the Buddhist approach and the way the Buddhist meditation practices. So you'd be right, you'd fit right in. And I think it is a real nice, one of the wonderful things about being in doing this right now at this period of history is that yoga is coming back together again with Buddhism, and all these different traditions are enriching one another, as well as the West and the East. So I think you might really enjoy it. So I hope you can join us.
Yeah. Yes, I realized that I have so many tools, but the people need more and more things for their mind.
Yes, there's always so. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I teach a lot in the yoga context also, particularly because, as you said, Buddhism has so much to offer, particularly about the mind sciences.
Begonia, there's a question about fees. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, maybe Roshana could be.
I think Roshana
left. Okay,
Yeah.
so the cost for the year is 3,200 Swiss francs. So that includes the whole online teachings, which are it's 2 meetings per month every Tuesday, and that includes all the materials, all the video materials, all the readings, and correct me if I'm wrong. And then there is also a special price, like a reduced price for people who have either students or are unemployed or are senior. So when you do the application, it's all kind of explained, and there is a field where you can fill in case you need financial help for that. Yeah, it's 3,200. Somebody's asking 3,000 per year. It's 3,200 normal fee, and it's 2,100 if I'm not wrong. Let me for reduced fee. And excuse me if it's 3,100. Sorry, so it's 3,100 normal fee. It's a bit cheaper, and 2,000. I can't remember now exactly the reduced fee. But if you, I'm gonna send you the link to the web page right now.
If you're curious, yeah, let me just say that if you're curious, that you can apply, and then you can discuss the finances with one of us, with Begonia, Roshana, and see what can be worked out. There are reduced fees, as Begonia is mentioning, and you can also pay in installments over the course of the year. So we try to, if someone has an interest, we try to make it possible for them to join us.
Mm-hmm. So there's a question about what time it starts. The training session on Tuesday. It starts at 6 o'clock, from 6 to 7:30 Swiss time. And yeah.
Okay.
And you can click on, I've just sent the link to the web page. You will find all the details there as well. So if you can, the problem English is not so good to speaking my group in German.
Yeah, you can certainly speak, you can certainly ask questions in German. You know, Diego hopefully will be there to help us, or Begonia, or if not, I have some German. I can try to sort it out. You know, we can certainly get help translating anything that is the nuances, the subtle nuances. Sometimes you have to hear it in your own language, and we understand that, and that's, you know, part of our partnership. I think. Sorry.
Edith again. Please.
Mona Moitli was
German,
there before. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
She was waiting for some time now.
Of course.
So good evening. Could you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
I'm a psychotherapist and MBSR teacher in Switzerland. And my hope was that this program could bring these two a little bit more together. And I'm wondering could it help me for my daily practice as a psychotherapist? Or is it more that it will help me for my own practice, or?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mona. And you know, certainly what we found is that as we learn more about our own practice and more about the psychology of that goes with the practice, the different way of looking at the mind, the different way of you know, working with the mind, that it does really impact our clinical work. Most of my day I spend as a psychotherapist, and I'm always relying on what I've learned in the Buddhist tradition to help, you know, see new ways of explaining, you know, to people, you know, how they suffer and how they can stop suffering. So I think that there's a lot, you know, and you know, they're also very specific. We review the integrative therapies, for example, all the different dialectical behavior therapy, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy. We also look at psychoanalysis and psychoanalytic theory and try to integrate Buddhist theory and psychology with all of these traditions. So we spend a lot of time essentially understanding how we could, you know, use the Dharma, use this practice to understand the mind more deeply and to change the way we practice to be more effective. So I think you very much, we would hope that and expect that you would learn a lot that would really impact the way you work with people. Yeah, that's part of the aim, is to share the benefits, right? And to be able to integrate the language, and the methods. It's a different language, the language of modern psychology from the language of mindfulness, and learning how to explain things to people and have a dialogue between the two different psychologies can be very enriching.
Thank you, Len.
Okay.
Right. So there's still, we are a little bit over time. I think this is super interesting. People are, I think, eager to learn more. We have Edith asking again a question, and shall we take it and shall we call it a day? What do you think?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Edith, did you have another question?
Ja, auf Deutsch geht's schneller. Es gefällt mir sehr gut und ich würde sehr gern so in so einer Art Sangha mit dabei sein. Bloß ich kann vielleicht nicht, also kaum jeden Dienstag pünktlich Jetzt wollte ich fragen, gäbe es auch eine Aufzeichnung? Ohne mich natürlich, aber also wenn das Zoom ist, aber dass ich trotzdem also keine Woche versäumen müsste, weil ich das im Nachhinein wie auch immer anschauen könnte. So, is there any?
The question was basically about recording of the sessions on Tuesday, if those are recorded.
Yeah, absolutely, they are recorded. And so if you can't make it for any reason, you would have a chance to watch the recording and also to comment. We encourage people to write a few notes and what they observed or and also there's individual time with the co-directors and other ways to connect with your group. So certainly you don't have to make every single Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all really for sharing your time and for your enthusiasm and wonderful questions. Thank you, Diego, for sharing more. I love the dialogue with you. It's very exciting. And of course, Begonia, thanks for making this all possible.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you to everybody for their interest and participation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe and Diego. It has been super interesting. And thank you to everyone for making the time. And any questions you can write to me or to Roshana. Roshana, she will be she's kind of a program coordinator and will be able to explain many more things, and also me. So just reach out with any questions, and we look forward, hopefully, to seeing you again, that you join.
Das ist direkt bei der Apotheke ungefähr, oder? Ist ja auch ein ja.
Thank you.
Okay, so bye-bye. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Be well.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us.
Take care.